Bernini is everywhere in Rome, more than anyone else who ever worked here. He shaped the obelisk in Piazza Navona, built the bronze canopy inside St. Peter's, and most visitors photograph both without reading the plaque. Behind that famous handful sits 10 more works, built into churches, side chapels, and quiet piazzas most people walk straight past. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where to find them. Ready? Let's roam. Number 10. The Elephant and Obelisk, Piazza della Minerva. A few steps from the Pantheon, a small marble elephant carries a red granite obelisk on its back, and most people who stop for a photo have no idea who made it. In 1665, Dominican friars digging in their own garden uncovered an ancient Egyptian obelisk, and Pope Alexander VII wanted it raised in the piazza outside their church. He picked Bernini's design over a simpler plan from one of the friars, Father Domenico Paglia, who argued the elephant's legs alone couldn't carry the weight. Paglia won that argument. Bernini had to hide a support block under the animal's belly and disguise it with a carved saddlecloth, which left the elephant looking stockier than he wanted, earning it the nickname, the Minerva Chick. Rome has repeated one version of what happened next for centuries, though historians call it a tall tale, that Bernini got his revenge by turning the elephant's back end toward the friar's monastery. True or not, the elephant still smiles today, while tourists snap a photo and move toward the Pantheon. Number 9. The Triton Fountain, Piazza Barberini. A muscular Triton kneels on 4 dolphin tails, head tipped back, blowing water straight up through a conch shell. Bernini built it in 1642 for his patron Pope Urban VIII, and the Barberini family bees are carved right into the base if you look closely. It was one of the first fountains in Rome to treat a piazza as a stage, and the idea spread across the city and then across Europe. A few yards away sits another Bernini commission for the same pope. Finished months later in 1644, a small marble shell with 3 bees drinking from it, built as a public horse trough for the neighborhood. One fountain gets photographed by everyone heading toward the metro stop that shares its name. The other, smaller and easy to miss, was Bernini's last commission for the Pope who made his career, and most people in the piazza never notice it. Number 8. Daniel and Habakkuk, Chigi Chapel, Santa Maria del Popolo. Inside a church most tourists already know, but for the wrong reason. People come to Santa Maria del Popolo for 2 Caravaggio paintings in the Serasi Chapel, the Crucifixion of St. Peter and the Conversion of St. Paul, and they rarely look anywhere else. A few steps away in the Chigi Chapel, 2 marble figures by Bernini flank the space in dramatic, twisting poses. Raphael designed the chapel more than a century earlier for the Chigi family, and it sat unfinished until Cardinal Fabio Chigi, the future Pope Alexander VII, brought Bernini in decades later to finish it. One church holds Raphael's architecture, Caravaggio's paintings, and Bernini's sculpture, and most visitors leave having registered exactly one of the 3. Number 7. Palazzo di Propaganda Fide, near Piazza di Spagna. 2 architects, 1 building, and most tourists only notice the second one. Bernini designed the facade facing Piazza di Spagna in the 1640s for Pope Urban VIII. After Urban VIII died, the new pope favored Bernini's rival, Francesco Borromini, who took over the project, tore out Bernini's small chapel to build his own, and designed the wavy, curving facade on the Via di Propaganda. Guides all over Rome still say, Borromini worked a few mocking details into that facade aimed at Bernini, who reportedly lived across the street and watched it go up. Tourists walking to the Spanish Steps see Borromini's curving wall. Bernini's calmer, more restrained half of the same building sits around the corner, getting none of the attention. Number 6. The Real Bridge Angels, Sant'Andrea del Frate. Every tourist who has walked across Ponte Sant'Angelo toward Castel Sant'Angelo has seen 10 marble angels lining the bridge. Most of them don't know 2 of those angels are copies. Bernini personally carved 2 of the originals, the angel with the crown of thorns and the angel with the superscription, and the Pope decided they were too beautiful to leave outside in the weather. copies went up on the bridge, and the real ones ended up here, in a small church near the Spanish Steps that most visitors never enter. You can stand a few feet from work, Bernini's own hands finished, almost alone, while a few blocks away tourists keep photographing a stand-in. Number 5. Sant'Andrea al Quirinale. A small oval church on a quiet street, easy to walk past entirely. Bernini built it between 1658 and 1670, and according to his son, he called it his most perfect work, prouder of it than anything else he built in his career. In his later years, Bernini reportedly spent hours sitting inside, looking at what he'd built. Step through the door and the whole space pulls your eye upward toward a golden dome lit by a hidden window, sculpture and architecture working together exactly as he intended. It sits a short walk from the Trevi Fountain and the Quirinale Palace, on a route tourists already walk, and most never go inside. Number 4. Bernini's grave, Santa Maria Maggiore. Somewhere underfoot in one of Rome's 4 papal basilicas lies the man responsible for half its most famous monuments, and almost nobody notices. Bernini died in 1680 at 82, and chose to be buried here, in the Cappella della Madonna, out of a lifelong devotion to the Virgin Mary. There's no grand tomb, no sculpture, nothing that announces who's underneath, just a plain stone slab with a modest inscription. Visitors come to Santa Maria Maggiore for the soaring gold ceiling and the ancient mosaics overhead, eyes locked upward, and walk directly over the resting place of the man who shaped more of Rome than almost anyone else in its history. Number 3. Bust of Gabriele Fonseca, San Lorenzo in Lucina. Just off Via del Corso, the busiest shopping street in Rome, sits a small parish church that most people pass without a glance. Inside, in a side chapel Bernini designed in the late 1660s, is his marble bust of Gabriele Fonseca, personal physician to Pope Innocent X. Fonseca is shown mid-prayer, hand pressed to his chest, robe slightly open, caught in a moment that feels almost unguarded. One visitor who went looking for it admitted he barely registered anything else in the church. He'd come only for the bust. On most tourist maps of this street, the building doesn't rate a mention. Number 2. Blessed Ludovica Albertoni, San Francesco a Ripa, Trastevere. Across the river, away from the main tourist circuit, in a church the Altieri family commissioned to honor a newly beatified noblewoman. Bernini was in his mid-70s when he carved it, one of his last major works, finished around 1674. Ludovica Albertoni lies in marble, head thrown back, body caught mid-tremor, lit by a hidden side window, the same trick he'd used 20 years earlier on the sculpture coming up next on this list, his most famous one. He went back to the same pose, the same lighting, the same idea of catching a person at the edge of religious rapture, one more time before he died. Visitors to Trastevere come for the restaurants and the cobblestones. Most have no idea one of Bernini's last great works, and a direct echo of his most famous one, sits in a church nearby. Number 1. The Ecstasy of St. Teresa, Cornaro Chapel, Santa Maria della Vittoria. If you've seen a photo of Bernini's work without knowing his name, there's a good chance it was this one, the original version of the pose you just saw in Trastevere, made 2 decades earlier. Commissioned by Cardinal Federico Cornaro and finished in 1652, it shows Teresa of Avila in the moment she described in her own writings, overwhelmed by a vision so intense she couldn't tell whether it was pain or ecstasy. An angel beside her holds the arrow that caused it. On either side of the chapel, marble portraits of the Cornaro family lean out from sculpted balconies, watching the scene like a theater audience, exactly as Bernini designed it. Architecture, sculpture, and light built to work as one. The church sees a fraction of the crowd that passes through Piazza Navona a few minutes away, where another, more famous Bernini fountain gets all the attention. This is the one work art historians call his masterpiece, and most afternoons it sits nearly empty. That's 10 pieces of Bernini scattered across Rome, tucked into churches, side chapels, and one plain grave most visitors never notice. The city already builds tours around the fountain in Navona and the canopy in St. Peter's. Now you know where the rest of him is hiding. If you want more of this, like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments which of these 10 you'd visit first. Until next time, keep roaming.